Welcome back, everyone. Jake here. Currently, we're on day 17 of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and in this video, I want to talk about what's the possibility that NATO might enter the war, because Russia and Vladimir Putin definitely underestimated the resolve of Western democracies. Amazingly, in the United States, guys, Democrats and Republicans are working together on this issue. Congress passed a $1.5 trillion spending package to avoid a government shutdown, and in this package, they pledged $13.6 billion in emergency aid for Ukraine. Hopefully, this money can do some good. Additionally, in Europe, they're no longer questioning why do we still have NATO. Germany itself is going to ramp up military spending, potentially doubling how much they spend over the next couple years. So whatever strategic objectives Vladimir Putin had in weakening NATO, it has done the exact opposite. And in this video, let's talk about NATO's expansion east, because this is one of the justifications that Russia is giving for why they attacked Ukraine. They're saying that if NATO had never expanded east to Russia's border, they wouldn't have felt threatened, therefore they wouldn't have felt the need to invade Ukraine. But let me ask the rhetorical question, guys. How many shots were fired by NATO in their conquest of Eastern Europe? The answer is obviously none, because all of these countries, all of these democracies in Europe wanted to join NATO. NATO is a common defense pact. If you attack one, the rest of them will come to their defense. So ask yourself the question, why? Why would Poland, why would Bulgaria, Romania, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia all feel the urgent need to get inside this common defense pact, to get the protection of NATO? Protection from who? It's the same reason why Ukraine wants to join NATO, because this was always going to happen. All these countries knew that at some point in the future, Russia, either under Vladimir Putin or some other autocrat, Russia was always going to attack them. And I still believe this is true, that Russia in the future, if they succeed in Ukraine, will take the Balkans, they will attack Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. The reason why is because Vladimir Putin is a former Soviet KGB intelligence officer. This is just how he grew up. This is just how he thinks. This is always what he was planning. When he took control of the country in the year 2000, he's been planning this. He's been planning this for 22 years to reconstitute the Soviet Empire, to extend Moscow's area of influence over all of these countries, potentially even into Poland again or into Romania again. And to prove my point, just use your eyes, look at the pictures, look at the videos. There are reports, guys, of Russian vehicles in Ukraine flying the Soviet flag. And once again, there's just pictures and videos. There's no way to deny this. So they're not flying the Russian flag. They're not flying the Ukrainian flag as liberators. They're flying the Soviet flag. And as I've stated in previous videos, Russia can no longer win this war. All they can do is kill more people and destroy more buildings. But that's not winning. Their strategic objective when they invaded Ukraine was to topple the government in Kyiv, take the city, and replace it with a puppet government that would be loyal to Moscow. At this point, guys, that's never going to happen. So it's up to Russia how much longer they want to stay in Ukraine, lose resources, lose soldiers. They're hemorrhaging every day. And ultimately, the reason why Russia is going to lose this war is because of the numbers. Perhaps you didn't know this, but Ukraine geographically is the largest country in Europe. It's bigger than France. So every time Russia takes a town or a territory, they have to leave troops behind in order to hold it. The last time the Red Army retook Ukraine from the Germans during World War II, they had 10 million soldiers. Right now, they only brought about 150,000. Most of them are poorly trained, poorly equipped, conscripts that don't want to fight. And when you think about the Ukrainian side, this is a country with 44 million people. So let's assume there's 40 million people left in the country. I know a lot of refugees have left. Half of them are men, so we got 20 million guys. Half of them are able-bodied men, not children or elderly, who are willing to fight. So there are 10 million dudes right now in Ukraine pretty pissed off that their country has been invaded and all of their towns are being destroyed. So the fight right now is between 10 million Ukrainians being armed and funded by the richest countries on earth versus 150,000 Russian troops that aren't well trained, aren't well equipped, probably don't have enough logistics support from mainland Russia, as the Russian people are being kept in the dark. It's one thing if the Russian nation were to mobilize for war and the civilians back then would be helping, the troops on the front line fighting the battle. But that's not what Vladimir Putin is asking for his people to do. So let me show you guys a video of one of these Javelin missiles taking out a Russian tank. And keep in mind that every day there are hundreds to thousands of these missiles being brought in, and any guy hanging out in the woods up to a mile away can take out this tank. I mean, inside this tank, guys, there were 2 or 3 Russian soldiers. As I always state in my videos, they're dead now, and that didn't need to happen. They didn't need to die. And you can go online and you can see the pictures and videos. I've seen dozens or even hundreds of all of Russia's ground forces just being completely decimated by the Ukrainian insurgency. People keep talking about this 40-kilometer long convoy that's heading towards Kyiv to lay siege to it. Where is it, guys? It's been 2 weeks. The drive from the Belarus border to Kyiv is only 4 hours long. Let's say you're taking a tank and it's slower. Okay, this is a 10-hour drive for a tank. How are they still not there? How are they still not laying siege to Kyiv? The troops that are stuck on this border are freezing to death and starving to death currently, so it's not looking good for Russia. And in response, I think these Russian soldiers who are rightfully freaked out are committing war crimes and just slaughtering innocent civilians. So this video I want to show you is of an elderly couple driving a car through their town. A Russian tank sees it and then just unloads on it, fires 2 rounds into the vehicle, completely destroying the vehicle and killing the elderly couple inside. So once again, as these Stinger missiles and Javelin missiles take out Russian equipment, Russian soldiers, these tanks are just going to increasingly become more erratic and desperate, firing on civilians. A turning point in this war, I think, for world public opinion definitely revolves around this bomb dropped on a maternity ward and a children's hospital. I'm going to show you guys this clip in the event that you weren't following this.
Since Russia invaded Ukraine and began terrorist war against civilians, even then Ukrainian doctors helped also the occupiers. Now the doctors are one of the main targets for the Russian bombs, rockets and on-ground troops. When the war began, it became obvious that hospitals were under attack. Now the enemy uses cynical and brutal tactics. Russian army on purpose bombs maternity wards. Mariupol is severely damaged by constant shelling, but the maritime city blocking the southern maneuvers for the Russian army still stands. The main maternity hospital instantly took some of the workers and patients underground. Some stayed in the building. Today they were shelled with bombs. Mother, babies, doctors. Mariupol, direct strike of Russian troops at the maternity hospital. People, children are under wreckage. Atrocity. How much longer will the world be an accomplice ignoring terror? Close the sky right now. Stop the killing. You have power, but you seem to be losing humanity. President Zelensky. Death came to the place where the life is born. Political decisions and sustained pressure on Kremlin didn't save them. According to preliminary data, the bomb was FAB-1000. 1-ton shell against newborns.
So Russia unloaded a 1-ton shell bomb on a maternity ward, killing pregnant women and children. I'm going to show you some more videos. Once again, guys, this is pretty disturbing. So yeah, this is happening. Russian troops, Vladimir Putin, they're bombing maternity hospitals. Women just trying to give birth, they're killing children. They don't care about these people. So the question now is for the West, for democratic countries, for NATO, is this enough? Is this enough for NATO to say, we have to intervene, we have to stop these war crimes, these atrocities? There's been tremendous support from the West financially, and more veterans from NATO countries, they're not currently serving, but they have military experience. They're trying to join up with Ukraine's newly formed foreign legions. So 6,000 Americans have contacted Ukraine's embassy, willing to fight. 100 were selected by the embassy to come to the country. Here's another article, 20,000 foreign volunteers have signed up to fight in Ukraine. And, you know, you can either go there and fight legitimately through the Ukrainian government, or you can just cross the border, and if you're willing to kill Russian soldiers, you can do whatever you want. It's currently a war zone. So here's a clip I want to share with you guys directly from President Vladimir Zelensky, and he's speaking English in this clip. And he's talking about the need and the desire for NATO to impose a no-fly zone over Ukraine.
You prepared to do a deal. You've said you were happy to talk.
We can't stop alone all this. No,
How is it going to
only
stop?
if the world will unite around Ukraine.
They are uniting around Ukraine.
They are not. They're still. It's still very slowly. It's still very slowly, but you can feel it only when you are here, because the people from Europe or USA, it's far from Ukraine, it's far from the heart of this tragedy, and you can't see, you can't understand the details because you are not fighting here, and I understand why. And I don't want them to fight, but these countries can help, can unite. Because we can't speak about the close, I'm sorry that I'm speaking again and again about this problem, but we spoke about children hospitals, etc. And you know the number of these child deaths and so we are speaking about closing the sky. You can't decide to close or not to close. You can't decide. If you are united against the Nazism and this terror, you have to close. Not me. Don't wait me asking you several times, million times, close the sky. No, you have to phone us to our people who lost their children and say, sorry, we didn't do it yesterday, 1 week ago. We didn't push Putin. We didn't speak with him a lot. We didn't find the dialogue with him. We did nothing. And it's true. Yesterday, the world did nothing. I'm sorry, but it's true.
Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, as a number of other world leaders, say if they do that, if they close the sky, that could exacerbate and make the situation even worse. If they allow Poland to provide you jets and station it on NATO land, that will make it worse. What would you say?
What does it mean worse? For whom? So the first question is rhetoric, and we don't need rhetoric questions and answers. We have to have contradictory things. So it would be worse for whom? For our families? No. For whom? For them, No, who knows? Nobody knows. But we know exactly that.
So President Zelensky is being pretty smart. Every day he's mentioning this desire for a no-fly zone. If you think about the Ukrainian arguments for why they should be allowed to do this, it's their territory, it's their airspace. If the Ukrainian government says, we want a no-fly zone over our own country, we'll shoot down any plane. Doesn't matter if it's a Brazilian plane, a Chinese plane, a Russian plane. It's not targeted specifically against Russia, it's our airspace. We want everything shot down, and we want NATO to do it. So he's going to keep talking about this no-fly zone to allow Ukrainian ground forces to have basically equal footing with Russian ground forces. But obviously, the United States and NATO can't do this because if it was NATO planes flying into Ukraine to shoot down Russian planes, that's basically a war on Russia. That is a declaration of war by most people's standards. Additionally, for Russia's anti-aircraft systems, their defense systems, these are stationed in Belarusian and Russian territory. So for NATO planes to safely navigate the skies over Ukraine, they would first have to bomb Belarus and Russia to take out their anti-aircraft defense systems before they could then engage Russian planes over Ukrainian skies. The question is, guys, is what would it take to get to that point where NATO would agree to a no-fly zone? That is where potentially this conflict is heading if Vladimir Putin keeps escalating. The other idea that's been floated recently is that Poland, which has MiG-29 fighter jets from the Soviet era back in the 80s, they're willing to give these to Ukrainians if the United States will give them F-22s or whatever. And this is kind of an interesting situation because the Pentagon wasn't really being consulted about this plan. Ukraine was asking for the planes, and then Poland said, yeah, we'll do them. We'll deliver these planes to a NATO base in Germany. Ukrainian pilots can then fly them from a NATO base into their own country to attack Russian planes and then retreat back to a NATO base. Once again, I don't see how that's anything other than a direct confrontation between NATO and Russia if NATO is providing the refueling, the armaments, the maintenance, and the landing strip. Doesn't matter if it's Ukrainian pilots. So Ukraine is going to keep looking for these solutions to their problem, how to get NATO involved in the conflict. Because I do believe, guys, after Russia's terrible performance so far these last 17 days, that if NATO did become involved, this war would be over in 48 hours. Russia would not be able to withstand the onslaught and the barrage of NATO planes, NATO jets. So yeah, this is where Ukraine wants to take it, but NATO now has to look within themselves. What's it going to take for them to become an active participant in this conflict? And the world has a serious problem here, guys. The world's number one, you could argue that they have more nuclear weapons than the United States does. They have about 6,000 operational nuclear weapons. So a verified mass murderer in Vladimir Putin, who's a dictator, he's been in charge of the country for 22 years, has a nuclear arsenal of 6,000 warheads, and he's using it as leverage or blackmail in order to invade his neighbors, to steal more territory for the Russian Empire. And if he succeeds in Ukraine, guys, I don't think he will, but if he does, why wouldn't he just take Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia? Why wouldn't he take Moldova or parts of Bulgaria? Vladimir Putin has already committed to this path. It's victory or death. That's how the Soviets operate. And, if the United States or NATO is not going to get involved, then why did we spend all this money on these armaments and technology? The NATO Charter is only intended to defend NATO countries, but if Vladimir Putin escalates this and he starts using chemical weapons on Ukrainian civilians, or heaven forbid, uses tactical nukes or smaller nuclear devices, at some point NATO's going to have to get involved. I hope that day doesn't come, guys. I hope one of Vladimir Putin's generals just offs the guy in the Kremlin. But the next couple weeks, the next couple months potentially, are going to be incredibly dangerous and stressful for the world. I hope that once again a peaceful resolution can come about fast and the Russian people realize the mistake that Vladimir Putin has made. I hope Russian military leadership realizes the mistake that Vladimir Putin has made, and hopefully someday Ukraine can come out of this stronger than they were before. Okay guys, there's a lot going on in the world. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up to help out with the algorithm. If you have any comments or questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, take care, be safe.